just in case Stephanie can't get here or whatever. Yeah.
I just thought
Yeah,
about that
great.
because my wife knows
Yep.
a ton, and she will say a lot of things, and it's really good information. I don't want you to miss it.
Yeah. So I would like to, yeah, maybe we could introduce, Caitlin and Abby, so you know who else is with us here.
Yeah, so my name is Caitlin Engel. I work with the Dunn County Health Department. Um, I'm the public health educator. So basically, I work with each individual action team within our health coalition. We have 5 of them, and I do whatever I can to support them in the best way that I can. So yeah, Stephanie, who isn't here, but her and I have been building our website together and trying to make it nice and pretty and everything that everyone wanted it to be.
Well,
It looks like somebody else might be here or is close to being.
Trying to come. There's a blank black box. Yeah.
So I was trying to connect onto my laptop this morning and I was having trouble with it. So I ended up connecting on my phone, but I'm still trying to get onto my laptop because I think that'll be easier for me. So that might be me trying to get on with my laptop.
that's okay.
Okay. Well, there comes Stephanie. So Abby, just introduce yourself a little bit, maybe.
Sure. So how I got involved with our mental health action team here in Wisconsin, I went to school at the local college, UW Stout, for my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. So I was working in Menominee as a mental health counselor. I am no longer doing that, actually. I lost my job because of the pandemic, but wanted to get back involved with helping with this coalition because I think that we're doing really good things. So Becky had reached out to me and just got back involved, and I'm going to be helping make the paper copy format of the resource guide.
Cool. That's fun work.
Hey, Stephanie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
So we're introducing each other. So can you introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Stephanie Hentz. I'm the Human Development and Relationships Educator for Extension Dunn County here in Wisconsin. I have been a founding member of our health coalition, and I'm a lead support for the mental health action team. Not a co-chair, but just a support there. And yeah, but any other information you're looking for?
No, we were just
okay.
Trying
Wonderful.
to make sure we understood everybody who was there.
Okay, great.
So I'm Dave Phillips, and my wife Zoe Hale. I'll let her speak for herself, but we're both retired military, came to Anderson because we have a daughter that was in serious relationship, then engaged, then married, and we expected all that to happen, so we moved. We chose here in Anderson to come. I have a ton of experience working on church staff, but we moved here. I told Zoe, I said I didn't want to be on staff anymore. I just wanted to actually be in the community and be a part of what's going on, and really just to be the hands and feet of Christ anywhere that I can be. So that's where my background comes from. My heart and my desire is to be able to help people. I'll let Zoe tell her story, but as she got going and collecting resources, it just was a perfect match for me because I was always looking for ways to help people. Zoe started collecting all this wonderful data, and then what you see on the website and the online resource guide and so forth, there's stuff that's our response to kind of the needs in our community and what we felt like needed to happen. So as far as the software side of things, I have been, I don't know when I officially became a software engineer, I would say 1995 or so.
Right after you retired.
Yeah, in the military, I did a lot of software development. And then after I retired, I went full-time doing software engineering for quite a while. And then really got tired of being used essentially as the software guy. So, and you know, God was doing different things in our lives, and I didn't have to really go after that big contract and do all that kind of stuff. We were doing that. We have 4 daughters, and so we were doing that between that and the military to fund our daughters' education as they went to all their various places. So yeah, I'm trying to be brief because I know you have a lot of things you want to hear about, but anyway.
So Dave was nice about the fact he retired and then followed me all over the country, and then I abandoned him whenever I would deploy. I think the record was I deployed and he had 4 teenage daughters. I mean, obviously we did, I just wasn't in the country at the time. So that's where he gets his gray hair from. It's not age, but
it is age.
Okay, maybe it's a combination, but nonetheless, his IT job was portable for wherever we were stationed. Having been in the military for 27 years, one of the things that I developed some talent to doing was tracking down things called hard and deeply buried targets and looking for people who didn't want to be found, which turned out to be very similar to the problem of finding out what's going on with people who are contending with poverty or people who are experiencing homelessness. So these people are hard to find and not necessarily willing to be found. And then finding resources is very similar to the targeting problem that I did for the military for many years. But the best part of it, and I say this often, is no one is shooting at me. I mean, if I want to go explore—
Not often anyway.
Yeah, not often. But if I want to go explore my data, I can just drive to it. And so I found that really kind of entertaining. Like, this is so much easier. You know, these aren't hostile targets. This is great. So because we're kind of rural, people get sort of caught up in being in their little communities, in their little towns. And so they act as if the towns are a million miles away. And from our perspective, it's like, well, you know, that's only 15 or 20 minutes down the road. I'll just get in my car and drive there and talk to real people. But a lot of people are consumed by having a relatively small staff. They don't necessarily have time to give you the information you want. So I called it my superpower. I would show up, I would take my phone, I would take pictures of what they had on their door, what they had on their window, what they had on their bulletin boards. I would collect all the pamphlets they would have. I would look at their websites. Since I had been in the former Soviet Union, I was familiar with websites that have like really scary colors and awful content, but nice people behind them. We considered a success when we get a nonprofit to include something like a fund me link on their page, or maybe like a wish list for the things they could use. We're like, oh, okay, that's a big step. Let us help you do that. But the people are actually there. So I did something called AmeriCorps, which is it's like a federal vow of poverty. So I did that formally for a year, and then I had a follow-on effort that was about 9 months long. And they just ask you 2 questions, which sound simple, but they're not. What does poverty look like in your community, and what is there to help them? And so being military and being used to tracking things down, I just collected information and started organizing it. But about 4 or 5 months into AmeriCorps, one of my cohort that I worked with had a particular nonprofit that was focusing on helping people stay in their homes, but weatherizing them, maybe making them handicap compatible. And in many cases, they're living in a situation where it really is a public health menace. So you want to clean up the house that they're in because it's going to prevent their health problems, as opposed to waiting till they're sick enough, taking them, you know, to a hospital or taking to a health facility, and then putting them right back in the environment that made them unhealthy anyway. And so he kept bothering me because I lived in the county that didn't have a resource guide. He kept saying, this one has a resource guide, that one has a resource guide, but you guys don't have a resource guide. And after about the 5th time, I said, fine, we'll put one together. And so we did that. Now we're on version 9. You know, so, but it's a combination of things. So some of it is the content, building the relationships with the people, so the content is often current, and when it's not current, having an online capacity to be able to update it. Because if you print a piece of paper, some element of it's going to be out of date. So we design these so people can write on them. And really, they should disintegrate in a couple of months because the information is going to be updated and we're going to print a new one. We have a notes section. It became really evident that having a physical piece of paper that you could hand to somebody in need, that you could circle what you were talking about, that you could put notes on it, that they could have it in their hands.
Yeah, when you guys, this may be part of your questions that you already have, but since you've mentioned that, the thing that I noticed that people would come to church with lots and lots of scraps of paper and scribble notes on all kinds of things and glossy things that they couldn't write on. And so when we chose to do this, we chose to do it so it actually folds up even one more time, and that fits in your pocket really easily. It is printed on just regular paper. So Abby, if that's your role is working on that, strongly recommend that you just do it on regular paper. And as Zoe said, don't expect it to last forever. It's not a trophy piece. It's designed to be something that people are going to use and wear out, because we're going to print this thing 4 times a year, most likely, and probably have hundreds of updates over the year.
But they're good updates. I mean, even when we had when we had our initial version of this, we just gave it out freely. I mean, we made sure it was free to everybody.
Right back. Let's say hi to Charlotte real quick. Sorry, hang on a second.
It's his birthday, so his relatives are calling him.
Oh.
as they wake up across the time zones, much like you. But we found it was really effective just to give these out for free and to get feedback, and that made it a much better product that we got feedback. And because people could write on it, it made it really clear that we wanted update it right all over it. But part of the design is that it is attractive. And I don't mean like you want to date it and take it to dinner or any of that kind of stuff. It's simply visually appearing, and I think that matters. You know, a lot of times you get a list that's, black and white. I mean, it is what it is. It's okay to have stuff written down, and there are nicer fonts than others. Pick your fonts with care. But having something that was attractional just meant someone felt like it was intentionally designed, and it was. So if you have things that are evocative in your environment of comfort, I would strongly recommend use them. I mean, it's just to let people know that you're intentional and you're being considerate, but you're also connected to the community when you use things like that. So the picture that's on the front is a landmark that lots of people recognize. So we chose to do things like that. The different colors have to do with helping your brain process information. The design of the guide is really to provoke a conversation. People in need might come in for something like a pair of shoes, or they might want a free shot for a particular condition, but that's probably not the only thing going on in their life. And so this starts a conversation, and maybe they'll ask better questions. Maybe not the first time you see them, but maybe later on, and maybe it'll help them define what it is they want to ask about.
Let's let them ask questions.
Yes. Well, I was covering for you having been wandering out. I did confess it was your birthday.
I'm older now, so.
That's right.
Happy birthday, Dave.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
How many of those paper copies would you say that you go through each time you print them?
We print 6,000 at a time. So we've distributed somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000, I think, since we started.
So this latest go around, we finally just started tracking it on Google Sheets because it just didn't need to be all that sophisticated how we track them, and we did categorize it in terms of things like our schools, food pantries, and health professionals like yourself in terms of where it gets distributes. In particular for us, what's interesting is around all the corners of the county. So there might be someone just outside their county, but they have a lot of people who come from our county or need to support that county, so they take advantage of that. So
and the number 6,000 is a cooperative number between our list of people that have asked for copies, which, by the way, we provide for free. We never charge anybody for anything. But the printer that we use, it's their tipping point for getting to an offset printing. And when you go to offset printing, the price comes down, quantity goes up, but the quality is tremendously better. What they do up to 6,000 mark, they do what they call digital printing, which is essentially their copying machine. You know, it's a big press copying machine, but it's still just a copying machine. And so the colors are different and the quality of text is different. And since, as you can see by the copy that you have, the print is pretty small. I mean, relatively small, but it's very clear because they do that offset printing when they do it. So that's something that you'll want to talk to whoever your local printer is and figure out what their capability is, and that kind of thing. So that's definitely, we learned that. So the first ones we printed here on legal paper, shrunk down. I cropped and scored and cut and folded, and it was really a pain in the rear. But and it was really small. I don't know if we have copies of that laying around. Not that it matters.
Yeah. I feel like I have a bunch of questions.
Good.
Go.
So one, what is the population size of your area?
Oh, well, good question. I had the misfortune of doing census outreach for the last year, so I can tell you our numbers are very inaccurate, but on the order of 200,000 people within Anderson County.
Okay.
The cities are relatively small.
Yeah.
20,000 or less.
Okay. 80,000 you said?
20 as in two.
Okay, 20,000. Okay. Yeah.
The county is just a little over 200,000 once they actually count.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then this is not going to be in any particular order. It's just like as they come up in my head. So when you guys picked those colors, was it based off like readability and somehow like more accessible for people with disability?
No, it was really just what I was trying to do is to provide contrast so that I didn't have to say this is a category.
Okay.
I just wanted it to stick out so that when people looked at they could tell they were different categories. So don't try to read too much into the thing.
Just wondering, you know, there is a lot of resources like in color theory and their readability for people with disabilities, and it looks similar to what you have put together. So I was wondering if that was intentional.
So there is a deep dark secret. There's a book called Storytelling with Data, which I would strongly recommend that you read or get out of the library. And your brain does do things very rapidly, and the guy does take advantage of those things. It's not rocket science, but it's useful.
I've been doing design for a long time, and so it really was not. It was if it matches some theory that you got, then that's a total God thing because I didn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. More questions. Let me look. Okay, so and this is, I guess, more of just a conversation for all of us. So you guys print 6,000 every quarter, you said?
About, yeah.
Okay, so here in Dunn County, we have roughly 50,000 people, give or take, across the whole county. So we wouldn't need that much, which is nice for our budgeting. For you guys, do you get your funding based through like grants or donations, or what does that look like?
No, we just, this past printing, it costs about $1,200 for to print one set. So again, and I'm telling you that our printer here loves the community, and so they give us a price that's absolutely killer deal.
Yeah.
I went to another print shop and they wanted $1 a copy to print them. And so the printer that we use charges us about 20 cents a copy.
Yeah.
It's really a tremendous deal. So
and we have a local printer that works pretty closely with our 4-H organization. So I feel like we could make a similar deal.
Yep.
Yeah, and the other thing you should think about is there's a difference between the total population in the county and the populations in need. So
well, we're We're
Yeah.
high in need. We're high in need.
So think about your populations in need and who you're communicating with. So if you have public health clinics and you know how many people you see there, that's kind of your guide for, you want one to be available. You want to have too many, not too few.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. But what did I miss what you said in terms of getting money for, did you get grants or donations?
Oh, yeah. So the county, when we first did it was, I don't know, we were on version 4 or 5 probably by the time they actually got wind of it. We just did it. Zoe and I did it because we felt like it was needed. And that's the honest truth. We just,
Oh, you're paying out of pocket.
so
Yeah.
we just did.
Oh, wow. You guys are
But
truly, truly special.
no, I appreciate that. But then we went to a meeting that it's called Safety Net. And the Safety Net meeting, you probably have something similar to it. It's where all these different agencies, mental health, DSS, just there's like 30 or 40 now. It keeps getting bigger. But there are all these different agencies that get together. One of the members of that is from the county and our local government here. And so he came and you saw the resource guide and said, where did this come from? We've been trying to do this and failed year after year. And we just said, well, we just put it together because we wanted it.
Yeah.
And there's other parts of that. I'm part of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council for the county, and it fit into some of those strategic kind of plans. But all of that to say, and I'm sorry, that was kind of long-winded to get to
No, thank you. I love the background and all of it.
The county council meets twice a month or so, and this particular month they decided to pay for it all. So
Wow.
so they funded it, and we do that through an umbrella organization called South Main Chapel and Mercy Center.
Okay.
And so we're effectively under that umbrella because Zoe and I didn't want to create a nonprofit,
Right.
create something where we're doing fundraising for this,
Yeah.
because that makes people suspicious and does all sorts of weird things.
Well, and it seems like an extra step that you guys don't need.
Right.
Right.
So the county funded it this time. They have paid when COVID hit back in March or so. They asked me how quickly could I get another set printed, and I told them we could do 4,000 on that digital printing, like I told you, and they said we'll pay for it, just get it done. So we got that done back in March, and went out on all the school buses that were feeding the children and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of a cool thing.
So a demographic detail that's important here, that people don't seem to contend with daily, which is really a strain on our environment, is 60% of the children that go to public school are in poverty, and they're not in poverty alone. So they needed food.
So anyway, the county has kicked in some. Sometimes they kick in $400 for printing, sometimes none. Our expectation is that we're not going to get any outside support. And so anytime some shows up, we're happy. So
Sure. Yeah.
anyway.
Right. And I think here in Dunn County, there is a number of philanthropists, I'll say, that I think could absolutely be swayed to support something like this, especially if it ends up being as robust as what you guys have created. Another question.
She has another question.
But
No. Go
I
ahead.
want to make it clear in terms of being robust. Take everything that's useful and applicable for your environment. Just cast. So many of them are national resources. Just create them in a way that's meaningful to your audience, but it's just as useful for you.
Yes, I'm so happy that you said that. And I felt like, based off what Becky was relaying, that you guys are like, green light, take what you need. Because we really did model it pretty much exactly after what you guys did. Did you get a chance to see our website?
Yes. What?
Oh, okay.
You're talking about the Wix website with?
No, this is the one that I modeled after what you created. Do you want to see
I
it?
haven't seen that one. I haven't used it. So
Okay,
I went through all the resources on the Wix site, and found 2 or 3 of them that I was like, hey, this is so exciting. So I want to see your website.
Yes. Okay. So this is, I totally modeled it after what you guys did. Yeah. So we're working on our little version of this resource guide. We don't have that background in creating like a widget on WordPress. I can do like basic stuff. Caitlin and I can do like the basics of WordPress. So we made something like this. But I absolutely love what you guys have here. This.
Yes, this is really cool. This was just like we had the epiphany, like, fine, we'll put a physical one together. So was the online version, which is like, yes, it's just you. By the way, there are some people who won't let us put them on the paper guide. So the online resource turned out to be super helpful in terms of coaxing people to share their information. Some people just don't get it. You know, like why we would want to put together resources and make them available to everybody.
Well, and they're afraid too. Like, for instance, some of the food pantries that you'll see on the printed guide, if you go on the online resource guide, we have more food pantries.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is they don't want to, one of the guys down in one of the towns here, they give out 15 families each time. That's their limit. They can only do 15 at a time.
Right.
And they're afraid that if they're on the resource guide, that people will find them, and their
Right.
normal families that come in won't be able to get fed. Now they do 15 on Monday and on Friday, and they limit it to once a month. So you do the math, and from their perspective, they have that many families that they're servicing. And if we go and print it on a resource guide and spit it out all across the county, they're afraid that people will inundate them, and they won't be able to
Right.
service the families in their community.
And by the way, we're also collecting data so we can say, actually, that's not the case at all. The people who come to food pantries tend to
Right.
be very, very, very localized.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
we've also stolen a lot of data from evil Amazon in terms of hyper-localization and bundling of services to people. But we have at least 46 neighborhoods of deep need. Some of them need dog love like you have. We're just looking at your dog.
It looked like the dog handed her the journal at one point, which was
That's fine. So really, I would say that it's rare for people to move from town to town or food pantry to food pantry. Their cars are fragile. I mean, they're really thinking hard about each mile they're putting on their vehicle. So it's exceptionally rare for people to jump from one to another. But the online resource guide does break that barrier, allows more people to feel comfortable sharing. And then there also are resources that are much more effective for a social worker to have, or someone who's a case manager. So for example, the Homeless Period Project, you don't necessarily want an individual woman who needs sanitary hygiene items calling them, though they would be happy to support them. It's more effective for them to build kits that are appropriate for the population each helping agency sees. You know, whether it's in a Ziploc bag that can go in a backpack. And in our county, the public schools aren't allowed to give out tampons because of the toxic shock syndrome risk. So other agencies fill in the gap so that youth as well as mothers who would otherwise go without have access to tampons. So typically the agency goes to the Homeless Period Project, not the individual. So some of those resources on the online guide as well.
So Stephanie, I want to get back to
your questions.
No, you had a comment about numbers of copies, I think, and how we reached that number. I'm happy to share with you the Google sheet that we use to track distribution. You'll see a whole bunch in hospitals, and the medical staff are super excited about it. And you can look at that. I don't mind sharing that with you guys.
Yeah, that would be outstanding.
But the thing I wanted to say, the reason we do it 4 times a year, and Zoe alluded to this earlier, the superpower showing up, that is so powerful and so amazing. When we first started collecting resources, we started with Google, we started with all the traditional things and all the scraps of paper that people had. But as we would go into a place, like I would go into a shelter and ask them, you know, what are you using for a resource guide? And they would reach in their desk and, you know, they'd pull out something and go, oh, I've got this list of things over here that is usually, discolored and got coffee stains on and so forth because they haven't updated it in years. But that's how we started collecting the information. And so we would go and we'd find things on there that were not on Google, that had no websites, that had, and we'd go and talk to those people, and some of those people would be amazing. And like Zoe said, they're just focused on doing whatever it is they do. They're not going to stop to take time to build a website or try to do something to tell people. But we put them on the resource guide because they're doing amazing stuff.
And people within a category don't necessarily know each other within the category.
Yeah, I definitely want to get to that. But the challenge, what we're finding, the reason we had to print so many, the first year we printed them like every other month we were printing them, and we weren't doing 6,000 at a time. We were doing like 2,500 or so at a time because it was changing constantly. We'd be running into different, we found out this was there and that was there and this was there and that was there.
Yeah.
And so we didn't want to print a lot. So we got to the number 6,000 as a cooperative effort between the printer, and we felt like we had some consistency in what was going on. Even though there are lots of little changes going on in there, we feel like now that version 9 that you guys have is pretty solid, and those things that we have on there are probably not going to change that often. And of course, as I say that, something else is changing, but but it's much more stable. And so we're confident we could do quarterly printing, maybe even only 3 times a year. But then our quantities will go back up because 6,000, we'll probably need to be in the 7,000 or 8,000 when we print them next time.
And here's the other way to think about population. So we have really good data on school children. The Census Bureau data that talks about our populations of need, and if you went through any participation in the census, you know that children 5 and under were the most undercounted demographic, consistently from census to census to census. And it's also that demographic, having young children, tends to really drive a household into financial distress for all kinds of different reasons. So the school children data are warm, fuzzy children that are actually counted by the schools. So we're much more confident in that. And we're lucky that the way they do the methodology now, they report directly who's in poverty. And the federal poverty level is a number that's too low. So if the school is telling you already that you have families and children in poverty, you have even more families that are in need. So we know specifically there are right at 30,000 children that are at the poverty level who are not eating unless they're getting school food, lunch and dinner, and then we do snack packs through, not we personally, but the county does snack packs that go with him over the weekend, and that is 30,000 children. So I have the families of those 30,000 children I want to support. Then we have Meals on Wheels, because a real issue we have here are people who are either handicapped or elderly or both, who are housebound. So you don't see the need because you don't see them. So we want to make sure all Meals on Wheels recipients and their neighbors, because we have mill villages here where you have many houses that are 70 years old or older. The house owns you. You don't own the house. You can't replace the roof. You can't replace the plumbing. You can't replace the electricity, and all of it needs to be upgraded, but you own it and you're elderly. So that's kind of how we predict where our populations are, is be able to reach out to those people. We partner a lot with people who do home health visits for both the young children, especially for handicapped children and handicapped adults. That's what our population of need is, and we want to make sure they have the most current information when they're going into those home visits.
So when you're doing distribution, what does that look like? Is it you two distributing all of it, or do you have like a place where your people that help you pick up the copies, or what does that look like?
So
well, some of that has changed with COVID too. So,
so there are 3 big populations that help us out. So we make sure the McKinney-Vento school liaisons have their own resources, and those are the people within school that have federal money to help children who are homeless. Then we make sure, so we have our victims advocate in the police. So I make sure that I meet them and they're taking them and making sure that all of the police officers have them when they're out on patrol. And they also take them to our safe harbor, which is a domestic violence program. So they make sure that they have as many of them as possible. We don't go directly to all the different police departments. We have people within the major health systems. So for us, it's ANMED, St. Francis, Prisma Health, people who help a lot with that. But these days, sometimes you really have to go out to different agencies that support some aspect of health information. I go to all the food pantries because most of those people don't have the technology to go online to ask for us to give them copies. So I supply them. And I also learn things when I talk to them. We also do something informally in the process of doing resource guides. So I'll go to a food pantry and the food pantry might say, well, people just donated to us 200 pounds of cheese. And our clients really aren't the kind of people who have refrigerators. Can you take this someplace for us? So then, and this is also a normal military thing to do, to live in sort of a bartering environment. So then you take something that one agency has isn't useful for it and you take it to another agency and they usually have something they don't need either. So at one point, Dave had like $20,000 worth of bras in his car, which, you know, went to a place. Anyway, so we exchange information and we also exchange guides. So some of it we do ourselves because we gain information about our community by having conversations. And some of the people are not able to break away from what they're doing day in, day out, week in, week out, unless you go where they are busy and you are busy with them.
Yeah.
You know, so we treat those sort of as formal meetings. And I'm always telling people no parking lot is too far. I'll meet you anywhere in the county. We do a lot of parking lot visits because of COVID-19. It's not a pickup line, you know, it's not weird. It's like, hey, is there a parking lot near you or where we can meet? So we have groups of people who help with the distribution. The McKinney-Vento school liaisons help with the distribution. The people who support victims help with the distribution, and some of it we get to, like food pantries, they themselves help us with distribution, you know, because they're meeting people in the point of need. So it's a blend. I mean, it's a benefit to do it yourself and have a real good conversation with the people who are using the guides.
Yeah.
And like I said, before COVID, there were key meetings that happened monthly, which gave us an opportunity to show up with a box of resource guides and pass them out. It was super easy. It was really so much easier. The Safety Net Council, for instance, which you know crosses the county with all the helping agencies, that was we'd show up with 1,500 copies and they'd be gone. And so it was much easier back then. But at the same time, it's not about being easy.
Right.
And sometimes there are things that you look at and go, boy, we could be more efficient when doing this. But the benefit in just showing up and handing somebody a stack of 10 resource guides and having a conversation with them far outweighs the difficulty of getting there.
Yeah. As part of census outreach, I distributed 46,000 diapers. And so I did a really good job of mapping out the diaper need in the county.
Might be a different subject.
Still very interesting. A couple more questions, and it seems like a little strained from what we're talking about now. But I just want to ask them before I lose them. So, what is the dimensions of the handout that you have?
The paper copy.
The paper copy.
Yeah, it's the tabloid paper. So printers typically have 12 by 18 stock.
Yes. Okay.
They cut it down to 11 by 17 roughly.
Oh, that 11 to 17 is what you guys have.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Somewhere in between there. You have to measure it because they cut it down. So
yeah.
When I lay it out in 11 by 17.
Okay.
And
you make that in Publisher or?
I use Adobe Illustrator.
Okay.
Because I'm a Adobe snob, as I told Becky in email.
Yeah.
But I've just been using Adobe forever, so I'm completely comfortable with it.
Yeah. Extension has Adobe, so we do have access to that. But yeah, okay. So then the other thing is when you print out new copies, do you change the colors so people can see like, oh, this is the fall version, or what does that look like?
No, the only thing I change on each copy is the borders. I don't change the category colors.
Yeah, so this is slightly different border color, and we've sucked it up and acknowledged we need to just put a date on it.
No, I do that all the time anyway, but the if you look at the edges,
Yeah.
the borders around each of the categories, those I'll modify that so so it's real obvious to us that they're working with an old copy.
Gotcha.
And we make them throw them away, which they don't like to do. But.
Yeah, we take them from that. I mean, you were all smart enough to recognize that you're in the information domain. So you want your information to be current and you want it to be up to date. Some of the people we deal with in helping agencies are used to having scarce resources all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to hang on to these guides because they're afraid they'll never get any more. And we're like,
they're pinned to the bulletin board.
We're like, no, we're taking those back. We're going to give you 1 for 1. Look, I'll give you 10 extras so you can feel comfortable. We're going to come back again. And I find there's another book, and there's research on something called the speed of trust, and it talks about how many interactions you have to have in between groups for people to feel like there's an ongoing habitual relationship. So part of the reason that we have an abundance of guides is it means that I can show up and say, are you comfortable with getting 50? How many clients do you see a month? How many do you see a week? Well, how about I give you double the number of clients you see a week in that quantity, and then we can see how it goes, and I will come back.
Yeah.
And then if they ask me for something, I'm a good custodian of replying to their text, their phone call, or their email in a relatively short amount of time, and arrange for a personal visit as well in a relatively small amount of time. Or I'll have somebody who's in kind of our distribution cohort, whether it's a McKinney-Vento school liaison that already has a relationship, say, with that food pantry, so that they will get resupplies and feel comfortable that they can, this is a military phrase, they can pop a flare and say, hey, I need some more. So
Yeah.
And Becky, you had a question when we started talking about Adobe Illustrator. I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe while we're on that, have Abby jump in, and because we were just talking about different, you know, we don't have, I mean, the thing we want to do is we're just a whole group of people. Like right now we have a subgroup on our mental action team that is doing all this, looking for printing costs and all that. But we want it to be set up so that it's several people who are able to make updates, because we're pretty much volunteers doing this. And so to have a program that's very difficult to access or to use is a little scary to us. And so we are wondering if there are ones that would be, I know Adobe Illustrator is, you know, I know Caitlin, you say you have it, but you know, would all the other people be able to do? So could you, Abby, why don't you pop in here and say about what other kinds of things?
Yeah, so I guess that's a concern for me too. Like I've kind of jumped on as like maybe the main person like doing the design layout of our paper format. But realistically, it's probably not just going to be me doing it. And so I don't know if you have any insight onto like online formats, like a Google Drive type thing where like multiple people could access the document.
Yeah, so I could just chime in with that. Canva tends to be pretty user-friendly after people kind of play around and learn how to use it. And it's something that you can share and have multiple people editing and looking at. I think it's a little bit more design-friendly than what Google has to offer right now. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I would just throw out. But yeah, Dave, if you have any other ideas, that would be wonderful.
So now I'm going to put on my design snob hat.
Yes.
And just be real frank. It's I make hundreds of decisions every time I update the resource guide, and it may be, you know, I've got a few too many in this category. Let me decide what I'm going to do here. Let me switch it and put it over here. If you guys are only seeing one copy of it, but if I gave you the stack of them, you would see all kinds of changes happening between them. Yeah, I don't know where I don't really care about keeping archive copies. It's not like we're trying to build, you know, some sort of legacy here. But the decisions that I make, like in this version, what you see, because we finally got Zoe, because Zoe was out doing census stuff, was getting into food pantries. So in this one, when you see we put if you need a meal here, and when you open it up, now you see food pantries here. Well, the prior version of this, food pantries didn't even take up this amount of space.
Yeah.
So all of that to say, in the design process and the updating process, there's lots, and it's not just getting the right phone number and the right name of the place. There's layout considerations that you have to decide and make on that. Oh, one of the other things I did when I first started, the note section was the full panel, but because again, this is a COVID generated thing, the school districts are really important for people to get a hold of. And so I made the decision to go ahead and squeeze in school districts and give up some of the note section and hope that there's enough white space for people to write in. But from the design snob kind of perspective, if I had 5 people logging in and making changes to it, it would drive me nuts. I mean, I'd have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going on or who's doing what, you know. And if Abby came in there and decided, well, the food pantry category ought to be over here, and Stephanie said, no, it really should be over here, and Caitlin said, no, I like this, it'd never get published. We'd just be fighting.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Becky.
I think that's totally fair. And they're like on our end, we can absolutely figure out a way, like maybe one of us takes it that one year. I think our biggest barrier is that not everyone has access to Adobe Illustrator or knows how to use that software, even though from my understanding it's quite good.
But you do have a university in your town, which helps you a little bit, depending on your relationship with them and how you make it work out. Typically,
yeah. So I am the representative of the university. So like I would be like a very good contact to get access to that software. I just don't think that. I think for sustainability long term,
it's not the software, Stephanie. You can use what was it, ink something that you sent me, Becky?
Yeah. So with the one I found, it's considered comparable to Adobe Illustrator. It's called Inkscape, and it's an open source. So it's kind of like WordPress, open source. So anyone can use it. And I don't know, how that would be one that would be free and available to everyone to use. And what I want to say here is not so much about the design. I think we'd have to do the design, one person or, whatever kind of doing that. But it's more about the updates. So we want people that if a phone number changes, something changes, that people could go in and make those simple changes, not the big design changes. I think that's got to be, just 1 or 2 people doing that. But I'm talking about, volunteers being able to go in and just say, all I want to do is change a phone number or something.
Mm.
And when Becky says volunteers, she means like a specific couple of people who are all on the same page.
Yeah. So we're talking about 3 different things. So it's just good to say them out loud. So there's content management. Then there's the online design management. So you want to talk about online design management separate from your knowledge management. And then the third thing that we're discussing is the physical layout. And those are 3 separate things. They feed into each other because you want to make sure that your content management or the knowledge management that you're doing can flow seamlessly into your online system, and it can flow with minimum barriers onto your print version. But I would also tell you it's very normal to have university participation in a product like this. So your relationship may be a longer term, whether it's a community college or a formal university, because this is an information tool and a design tool. And the current college students and graduate students, the 20-somethings through the early 30-somethings, are very comfortable with choosing a tool and playing around with it and going to YouTube training or jumping on a site where you can post a question and say, hey, everybody here uses this tool. Please let me know if you've run into this situation. What would you recommend that I do? So you're going to find some people like that, and you don't need to have 50 of them. You need to have more than 1, but you don't need 50. Does that help, Stephanie?
I think that's something that we can just figure out what's going to work for us on our
Right.
back
Right.
end.
Yep.
But I do have to leave at 9. Is there any other questions that you guys have that I can listen to before I jump off? Caitlin, Becky, Abby?
I just wanted to
recording
ask
it,
you.
Stephanie.
I-
I'm just telling
yes.
Stephanie, we're
And I
recording
also
it,
wanted-
so you can look at whatever else.
Awesome. Thank you.
Go ahead, Becky.
Before you leave, Stephanie, I wondered if you could talk about, so we use WordPress, to make the website as you did, but you talked about that there's just a basic plugin for the searchability part of it, the online, and that you developed what we see, those cool things we see online. So could you just talk about that real quick while Stephanie's still here? But how might we do something a little more in depth? And I don't even know what I'm talking about here, but I just know that you added to it, right?
You're talking about the online resource guide? Is that what
Yes.
you're referring to? Okay, so
Yes.
the online resource guide is custom software that I developed. And I know that we were going to talk about that. I'm sorry that time has run out, but this is what you're referring to, Becky.
Yes.
So this has nothing to do with WordPress, just so you know. This is all
Okay.
stuff that I built.
Okay.
So, and the way that I built this was, from an architecture perspective, I expected there to be more than Anderson County doing this. But I haven't built all the interfaces to make it super easy for you to import data and update and so forth. Obviously, I have built forms that I can update and add agencies and so forth. That was part of the reason for this call, was to be able to talk about how to do something, what your needs are, and what you might want to do. But I know Stephanie has to take off, or maybe she's about to bolt. So I'm sorry.
I am fascinated by that. I would love to. Maybe I'll just watch the recording, and Caitlin, ask as many questions as you can think of. Okay.
My very best to think of each of them.
Okay, well, bye all. Thank you so much for taking time to share your knowledge, and I'm really happy that Becky found you guys and that we can bring this to our community that definitely needs it. So thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Oh, and happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie.
All right, Caitlin, ask your million questions.
Oh. Is Caitlin there?
Sorry, I muted myself and then never re-hit the button to unmute myself. So that program that you created for your website, is that something that you share with people or that you sell as well? Is it something that we could adapt to our own needs?
I think other than the selling it, I'm not trying to create an industry on that. I would love to be able to figure out how it is that you guys could use it for your own county.
Mm-hmm.
It basically sits in its own web space. So when you look at the URL, it says myresourceguide.org/app/CRG for Community Resource Guide. So it sits in its own directory on the website. But it is software that I've written and published out onto that site. It could definitely be taken to the next version, next level, and so forth. If you want, I can talk you through it for a little bit, because I do have plans for updating. This is what I call version 1.1. And so just to show you kind of what's here, each of the categories, I'm sure if you've looked at it, you've seen all this. But as you select the category, the number of resources are filtered based on whatever that category might be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Stephanie was talking about color theory. I didn't use color theory here. What I did was make sure there were different colors, different icons, and stuff like that. So when you flip it around, you'll see more details on the back of each of the cards. The reason for that is this is designed to fit on your basic iPhone or Android device. So each one of these tiles fills essentially the minimum size smartphone.
Like a Lifeline phone, a free phone.
Right. So
Okay.
the target market for the online resource guide really isn't that person in need. It's if they have a phone that can use it, that's great. But this was really designed for the case manager. And the bookmark feature is where that comes into play. So you bookmark 3 things and click the bookmark list. What you now get is the ability to print something or send it to a printer. It's much more printer friendly, and instead of all of this detail. So imagine somebody walks in and says, "Hey, I'm looking for something." So let me just, I'm gonna refresh that and clear all that stuff. So if somebody comes in and they say they're hungry, they're looking for food. So I can type in food here and say, okay, you're close to this place. You might be close to that place. Make sure you check out these guys. And so I'm going to hand them the resource guide. I'm going to give them the resource guide, which has hundreds of things on it. But I can go up to the bookmarks and say, let me print this one page out for you and give you a single piece of paper that has those 3 things we talked about with the details that you have on that. But they don't get inundated with all of that detail. So they get the resource guide, they get the printed resource guide, but they get a specific list of things that they can act on now. So for the case manager, that's only the beginning of the process. What the next version of this, the version 2 of this, will have is the ability to save a set of bookmarks. So if I've gone in there, like there's one of the large churches here in South Carolina, actually. What they're doing is they're picking resources that they like, and then they publish their own resource guide with their own 30 or 40 things that they want to do that they see all the time. So they're really kind of short-circuiting themselves, in my opinion, because what version 2 will do is version 2 will say, okay, these 15 or 20 things or things that I like, that I always recommend to people. And then you'll be able to save that set of bookmarks as here's my standard go-to kind of thing. The second thing that happens with that save bookmarks feature is I can be sitting down with John Smith here, and I told John Smith, I need you to do these 3 things, come back next week, and let's go through these next 3 things. And so when John comes back in next week, I can go and pull his bookmarks and say, okay, did you do these 3 things? So we're trying to create a tool for case managers, and that's some of the features that are going on there.
Okay.
So as you can see, I put in here at the very top is for Anderson County, South Carolina. And again, because it's a placeholder for any county, any state. So this could say Dunn County, Wisconsin. And the data coming off of the database then obviously will point to that and build, the exact same structure under that. So all of that's possible to do. That takes time, obviously, not just for the version 2, for the additional features that I'm talking about. The biggest concern that I have as a software guy is the interfaces that I use to update and add, I can manage without any problem, but I even asked Zoe to just let me do it because there's nuances about it, and that's just a matter of taking time to clean it up so that anybody can use it, and manage logins and stuff like that, which it's just all part of the process. It is possible, and I am interested in talking about what it might look like in terms of, if you guys are getting grant money or something, because I would love to be able to hire a group, 2 or 3 software engineers or software guys to do that work and get it to a place where any county could use it and anybody could input that. So I'd be real interested in managing that project if there was funding available to do that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would just like where you are right now with the program, I would hate for you guys to just like give it to us and not have us like recognize how much effort and time it takes to create that sort of a thing.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, that's the least of my concerns. To be real honest with you, that's the least of my concerns.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not a competitive space. It's not like that at all.
And I don't want to be Aunt Bertha. I don't want to be. I don't want to grow into those spaces. I mean, there are tools out there. In my opinion, and well, and Zoe agrees, I think, with this, is that they just get so wide and so broad and try to do everything. And to me, this is so much more useful to be able to pull it up on my phone and see each of those things. I use it all the time. And I know a lot of the guys that we work with use it all the time on their phone. The sheriff's department, you know, I interact with them quite a bit, and they have it bookmarked on their phone. So if they're just looking for something, they can quickly get there. And some of the other tools that are out there are just so huge, and it's normal in the software world. You know, you've heard the scope creep, and you know the projects get bigger and bigger. But I like to keep it simple. You know, even that extra bookmark feature that I'm talking about, being able to save the bookmarks, that's not all that complicated to do. It's just a matter of getting it set up. But beyond that, I don't want it to do everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense.
I have a question kind of about as you were going through all the little features on what you developed. There's one on there for 211. How did that come about? Did you? Yeah, and so what you've done is link to 211 any of the resources you have, but this also means that so not everyone's on 211.
Right.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah, we have about twice as many resources than 211 has. And we met with the executive VP for 211 South Carolina. We've had a couple meetings with him because we support what they do. I mean, if you look on the resource guide, we have 211 right there on the back, because we love what they're doing. But just like the food pantry example earlier, some people don't want to go to the trouble of being on 211, so they won't fill out the paperwork and do the form. Our desire is to encourage them to do that, but they have to decide they want to be on there. If they are on 211, then it's easy enough for me just to add that link so it shows up in the top of the little card. So you can click on that and go to 211 and see what they have to say. Here's the challenge. 211 is great, and Zoe will talk at length about this, how good they are with language support and all the details that they have that we don't have, that we don't offer. But updating the data is cumbersome, and it can be done, but again, it's maintaining that content that's a challenge for everybody to do. So
the 211 thing, there are a couple parts to 211. One of the most important things about 211 to us and many of the people who are in helping agencies is there's somebody else, you know, so someone in need can pick up the phone and call 211. The people who talk on 211 and who answer the phones do really good phone. They do a good job of meeting somebody when they're in the midst of a circumstance where they don't know where to turn. They're good listeners, they're good talkers, they're good communicators. I mean, that's a special skill set all by itself, and that's incredibly important to take advantage of that group of people, that cohort that knows how to communicate kindly to people who are under great pressure and stress, and that's important. Dave mentioned language resources, and I'm super, super frustrated living in the United States and having a one language resource guide. One of my last combat deployments, I was with 46 troop contributing nations, and we did simultaneous translations in our conversation across at least 20 languages on a routine basis. So the US government paid me to be in this really dynamic environment full of all kinds of international insights, and we were better at our mission because we talked to each other and we learned all kinds of cultural things. That was just awesome. And it's like pulling freaking teeth to get things in Spanish. not that I'm frustrated. So you guys have like Hmong resources, which I'm totally jealous about because we failed to count all of our Hmong here in South Carolina, and we got a bunch of them. Anyway, Dave has heard my rant about this, but we don't have many places where we've got language resources. When I was doing census outreach, I ran into a family from Afghanistan, and I said one word in their language, and they cried. Nobody here speaks their language, you know, it really made them feel welcome. And so whenever you have an opportunity to speak in the language that people are most comfortable with, it's really, it does something for them with respect to mental health. It's another form of community. So 211 has access to many languages and many language services, and that's not minor. ANMED, one of our larger health providers here, also has people who are familiar with languages, but that's really a burden on people, particularly if they're elderly, is just not to have a conversation in the language of their youth. So I'm jealous of your language capacity.
Wonderful. Yeah, those are things we hadn't thought about, but yes, and I've been in contact with the person who oversees, so Dunn County has we work with 211. Our problem is that we have, I think it's, maybe you do too, but I think it's like 13 counties that are, and it's all based out of a city about a couple hours south of here. And they do other, you know, in Minnesota and Iowa. So they have a lot of things. And so the maintenance is really, really tough. And that's what we found too. And it's sort of cumbersome to go in and find it. But, you know, your information about, you know, the language access and then just getting someone on the other end of the phone, those are really good things to think about. So they're all on board for us, you know, connecting with them.
Yeah, I mean, they're a resource. Every resource isn't going to meet every need. They just aren't. They all have their part to play, and you know, you think hard about what people's strengths are and try to use them in their strengths.
Yeah.
So to recap on the software side of things, if you guys have access to funds that want to put that together for Dunn County, then I'm real interested in having that conversation.
Okay.
It's definitely possible. In terms of what is needed, the term is called a full stack developer. That's a web developer term. So full stack means that they can do the database, they can do the user interface and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's the kind of person you're looking for. And I think Stephanie said she was connected to the college. I don't know if they have any computer science there or.
Yeah, our college is very like web and science based, and so there's like a whole department for software developers, and I think that would definitely be a route that we could go for finding someone to do it.
Yeah, that'd be excellent. And like I said, I'd be happy to manage that project with them to, you know, define the milestones and define the tasks that need to be done. I mean, I've done that. As I said, that's part of my background. I haven't had to do that in a while, but it hadn't changed in terms of project management. That's all the same. The software development side, it's a matter of having guys that are smart in the technology and are comfortable in that technology.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think those are all possibilities. And what I really like about what you're doing and what I hope we can be doing is just about the collaborations that I think there's, you know, working together. Like you said, it's not a competition who's got the data. And what we're looking at is taking a bunch of, so the Wix thing that I sent you is one of the resource guides we have. We have another one through our ADRC. Do you have ADRC? Aging Disability Resource Center, we call it.
Yeah, we do. Ours has a resource guide too, but it's super dated, and I haven't been able to find the magic person who actually does the updates, because it drives me nuts in the sense like the United Way location is from 18 years ago. And
oh my gosh.
It might have changed.
Yeah, I looked at ours. I just looked at ours online. I think, Caitlin, it's on the health department website. So the ADRs, or not the health, no, it's on the their own website. But
Yeah.
anyway, I looked up their guide, and it's just a paper tabloid kind of thing. And the last update on there is April of 2019. So we're talking a year and a half, ago that was done. So I guess our thing is we don't necessarily want to replace anything. People can do what they are still doing, but it would be sort of a way to bring them all together. And like you said, I loved your thing about some of these resources within a category don't even know each other.
Right.
They don't even know, who else is doing what they're doing. And I think that's very powerful too, that those people can work together. But I love the collaborative view you have of this, and really can bringing a community together. And I think going forward with COVID, our area, well, you've probably heard Wisconsin is very bad right now. But I mean, we have just so many needs, in our county. We're doing in-person school, and it's good because we have lots of kids that's the only place they get their meals from right now.
Like
and
us.
so summer was tough. Summer was really tough. And we have in the northern part of our county, my husband worked at a school district, Boyceville, it's called, and they now have kids. They don't even know where the kids are. And, it's really hard. Kids are living in cars and their family. So I really love that collaborative part of it. And I think,
Becky, let me talk to that, because I figured there'd be a good point to say that. And since you're recording this, Stephanie will be able to hear this as well. When we designed this, we had 3 different targets in mind. One is that we wanted the individual that was on the street or coming into an organization, we wanted them to have an immediate access to a broad range of things in a curated list that we knew was as accurate as we could make it. So that's the first audience. The second audience, as a pastor and as a person that desires for people that warm pews on Sunday, I wanted them to have a target list of places they could go serve. So this is a curated list of people that say, I have a heart for housing, house repair, or I have a heart for the Homeless Period Project, feminine hygiene products. I'm appalled that it's taxed and this and that. Who do I go help? Well, it's listed here. And so it's a curated list of people that want to get active in the community. Here's where you can get active and here's what you can do. And then the third audience, as you were just talking about, is that collaborative approach. So Zoe had a meeting with some of them call it clothes closets, some of them call it clothing closets, some of them call it a discovery center. They all have different names for it, but there are people that are passionate about clothing. And this is my thesis. If somebody is passionate about a subject and you get a group of those people together that are each passionate about that subject, then they will come up with creative solutions to do things that we would never think of. And our role as connections people is just to get them in the same room. And literally, we get them around a table, we tee off the conversation, and then we just sit back and take notes. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to do anything else. So we got a room full of people talking about, or Zoe did this, got a room full of people talking about clothing. It's like, okay, what do you guys want to do?
And they did good things. I always caution when we start talking about resources. There are people who say, "Oh, everybody's lucky to live in Anderson County. There's so many resources." And I say, well, there are 46 neighborhoods of deep need, and many of the people in the neighborhoods of deep need have no transportation. Do you see 46 food pantries on the list? No, you don't. We have a lot of unmet needs. We want to collaborate to take advantage of the skill sets of the people who do have helping agencies and do have a deep passion for clothing. I spent 27 years in the military. I can assure you clothing has not made my top 1 million things to care about ever in my entire life. So bless them for what they do, and I can hear it when they talk about it, the things that are important to him. And so it does occur to me that other people care about clothes more than I do, which is probably a really large group of people. Anyway, so they're meeting their needs in a different kind of way. But as part of the collaboration, as you're pointing out, Becky, one of the things that happens as we encourage people to be aware of who else is in the community, that they do a good job of mutually supporting each other. I briefly mentioned bras, because one of the things that's a real burden in Anderson County is pre-HUD standard single wides. So these are mobile homes that you can't heat, you can't cool, they're a public health menace. I think they should all be removed. I'm just a little biased, but if people try to heat them, they use things that they plug in, and sometimes they daisy chain those. And when you get an electrical fire inside of a pre-hood standard single wide, you're lucky if you get out alive, and that's all you take with you. So a lot of times people who escape from those house fires literally only have their pajamas on their back. So that's how we end up with thousands of bras in distribution across the county, is trying to get them to people, as well as the homeless liaisons, because being a teenager in high school is traumatic. Being a female teenager in high school without a bra is more traumatic. So we have a little, it's not black market, but a lot of fungibility of things just to preserve people's dignity. It's all around dignity.
Yeah. So
I want to be sort of cognizant of your time here. We don't want to take any more of your time because you have given us so much time. Could you have just really briefly, you touched on this, but you have curators of your different sections. So is that those people who are passionate about an area, or how did you find your curators for your section?
You know, our dream was at this point to have a curator for each category and you know, meet once a month and just kind of go through that. But let me give you a perfect example. If you look at the foster care category that we have there, Jocelyn Gibson is our curator for foster care. Jocelyn is in her job, her day-to-day job, 5 days a week or 9 days a week, however long. I mean, she's crazy busy. She's responsible for foster care across the entire upstate of South Carolina. So the idea of the perfect curator, Jocelyn's the perfect curator, because when we shoot Jocelyn an email, say, hey, we're going to do version 9.1 of the resource guide. Do you have any changes? It's no work for her at all. She goes, oh yeah, we need to do this or add that or forget that or whatever. In other words, it's not adding to her workload to be able to answer that question. The pregnancy care, Mary Birchmore, who's our curator for that particular category, she's nurse family partnership. This is what she does all day long. This is her thing. And so when we send Mary an email and say, how's it going? You know, do you have any thoughts for us? It doesn't take her any time. So that's to me, that if we had 24 of those people, or however many categories we have this week, if we have a person to do that, then they're already passionate about it. They love what they're doing. They can talk about it forever. And we just ask them, and we just prompt them to give us an update. So that's the perfect curator. We are not there yet. We're 2 years into this, and we're still looking for, like, I have tried 3 or 4 times for a housing curator. I really need somebody that is talking to all the different Section 8, government subsidized, all these, and I know they're out there. We know they're out there, but we just don't have time to get to all of them. So I'm looking for a curator for that, and across the line. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I really like that idea, because again, I think it's all about maintaining, relevant data. And if you don't have that, so, and like you said, it's easy for them because they know where the changes need to be instead of a volunteer trying to contact each one of those.
Yeah, and we did try that. We did try the volunteer, and twice we tried that, and they're wonderful people. We love the people that said, oh yeah, I'll do that. But they just didn't have the relationships with the people that are in that category. And so when they were calling, it was like, who are you? You don't know anything about what I do. But when Jocelyn calls, if Jocelyn had to call anybody in this category,
no, she doesn't.
She's probably already talked to him this week. But if she were to leave that job at DSS and go out and do something else, she would still have that respect in that relationship. And so she could call each of those guys and say, hey, anything we need to know about. And that makes it work, as opposed to just a volunteer calling through 200 different phone numbers. We tried that and it just didn't work.
But also COVID-19 has impacted some of that. But I think it naturally falls out. I mean, the reason that we like our resource guide now is because we were willing to do one that wasn't very good, that wasn't very complete, and distribute to people and say, hey, what did we get wrong? Please write all over it, give it back, we'll update it. And then we turned the next version out pretty quickly, just to reinforce the notion that our concern is not that you love our resource guide. Our concern is that people have access to the information and resources they need to be more effective. And I think because you already have a collaborative around mental health, you naturally already have a relationship with many of the things that are categories. Without a doubt, you have a relationship with people for addiction recovery, for elder support, for some of the other portions that are on this. So you probably very likely know people who are good at, but not everybody is a content manager or an information management manager, in terms of understanding the importance of the knowledge. So it looks like we lost Caitlin.
Yep, she just put a little note in the chat. She said, lovely to meet you all today. Thank you for your help and support, but I have to hop off. So
That's all right.
yeah, we want to let you go too. It's your birthday, Dave. You got to get on and eat some birthday cake or something. I don't know. But I really appreciate, again, this time that you've given to us. It's been a real gift. Don't you think, Abby, to hear all of what's going on. And we certainly would like to follow up with some possibilities as far as helping, finding some folks here maybe that could help with that design content. I mean, well, we have to work on the content part of it, but that design part. And again, we would have access, even this grant that we have right now that we could use. There are opportunities to piggyback with that with other things too. So we would definitely like to explore that more and see what we can come up with, because I think when you say resource guide, this is much more than a resource guide. This is, you guys are amazing to how you view this. And I think, and having been in the military myself too, I think it does give you a whole different view of what's possible in different cultures and different places in the country. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that you're doing this, and yeah.
Well, I appreciate you reaching out, and
We love your site.
Yeah, keep up the great work, guys. If you heard any theme in all of this, it's all about building relationships. When I talk to people about poverty, because I deal with people that are living on the streets and homeless every day of the week, I tell them, they want me to talk about poverty and what I see, and I said, the biggest poverty that we have is a poverty in relationships. We have physical poverty and we have lack of money in some place, but everybody is suffering from a poverty of relationships. COVID has made that really difficult, but the reality is that we are designed as creatures that want to be in relationship with one another. And when that's been taken away or that's lost, whether it's from a drug addiction or alcoholism or whatever it is that's created those barriers in there, from at all levels of income, that really makes a big difference. And that's what our heart's about. And curating a list of agencies that are trying to fill some of those needs, just create those connections that we think can make everything better. So that's really what we're trying to do. And it's called a community resource guide. Whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
Abby, anything else? Did we answer your questions?
Yeah, I think this was super helpful and just honestly just very inspiring, very motivating. You guys are doing great work. And I know that we've all said that to you today, but really just
Thank you.
Like wanting you to hear that, because it is truly amazing what you guys are doing. And I'm hoping that we can really emulate that. 'Cause I think that we can do a lot of good in our community if we can bring these resources together and really get them to the people so that they can be utilized to their full extent.
Yeah. So, well, thank you. We appreciate your time. And like I said, I learned a lot going through your resource list, and I'm going to poke around in your website as well, because different people see different things, and you think, hey, that's a really good idea. So if you see your blog post on our website, don't be offended.
Yeah. Wonderful. Again, thank you so much for your time, and we'll be in touch, I'm sure.
Great.
Okay, sounds
All righty.
good. Have a lovely day. Thank you again for your time and
Good day.
help. Bye-bye.
Bye. I'll send you a link to the recording.
Okay, thank you.